Chapter 1. The Blue Glow and the Scratching Sound. The match was over. The triumphant, three-crowned fanfare from the game echoed one last time in Ken's headphones before fading away. He leaned back in his chair, the leather sighing under his weight. The stream was done. "All right, chat, that's gonna be it for tonight," he said into the microphone, his voice calm and even, the same voice that had just been carefully narrating the placement of a royal giant and the perfect timing for a log. "Thank you all for hanging out. We got some good games in. GG." He clicked a few buttons. The bright, busy world of the game on his main monitor vanished, replaced by the simple blue glow of his desktop background. On his second monitor, the river of messages from his chat slowed to a trickle, then stopped. The number of viewers dwindled, a silent emptying of a once bustling digital room. The silence that followed was thick and heavy. It always was. The only sound left was the soft whirring of the computer fans, a constant, mechanical breath in the quiet apartment. Ken took off his headphones, the sudden absence of pressure on his ears making the room feel even bigger. He ran a hand through his hair and stared out the large window to his left. His apartment was high up, and the city below was a sprawling blanket of lights, a galaxy of orange, white, and red that stretched all the way to the dark horizon. He watched a single set of red tail lights snake its way down a street, a tiny, lonely traveler in the vast network. His own apartment was a small bubble of order in the chaos. A neat stack of books on his desk, a row of Funko Pops arranged by color on a shelf, a single, thriving succulent on the windowsill. He liked things tidy, predictable. It was the opposite of a Clash Royale match, where chaos could erupt at any moment from a well-placed goblin barrel. That's when he heard the sound. It was faint at first, almost lost in the hum of the computer. A soft scrap, then a pause, then another. Scrape, scratch. It wasn't a sound from inside his apartment. It was coming from outside, from the small balcony that overlooked the alleyway behind his building. Ken frowned. It wasn't the wind. The sound was too small, too deliberate. He got up, his joints popping softly, and walked to the sliding glass door. He peered through the reflection of his own blue-lit room into the darkness outside. There, huddled in the corner of the balcony, was a shape. It was a dog, a small, scruffy terrier mix with fur the color of dusty caramel. It was shivering, not just from the cold night air, but from fear. One of its ears flopped down while the other stood straight up, listening to every distant city sound. Its paw was scratching gently at the glass door, a hopeful, desperate little gesture. It looked up, and its big, dark eyes, full of a quiet question, met Ken's. Chapter 2. The Empty Water Bowl and the Brass Plaque. Ken didn't sleep well. He kept thinking about the dog on the balcony, its shivering form and its big, worried eyes. When the morning sun finally filtered through his blinds, casting long, dusty stripes across the floor, he went straight to the glass door. The balcony was empty. The dog was gone. He felt a strange mix of relief and disappointment. He made his coffee, the machine gurgling and hissing, and went about his morning routine. But the quiet of the apartment felt different today. It felt emptier. He kept glancing at the balcony, half expecting to see the scruffy little dog reappear. He decided to go for a walk, to clear his head before he had to plan his next video. As he closed his apartment door, his eyes fell on the brass plaque on his neighbor's door. M. Gable, Apt 7B. He had lived next to Mrs. Gable for over a year, but only ever saw her as a flash of a floral print dress and a cloud of white hair as she shuffled down the hallway. He could sometimes hear the faint, tinny sound of an old radio show through their shared wall. Downstairs in the building's lobby, he passed the main bulletin board. Tacked right in the center was a crisply printed notice with a very official-looking border. It read, "A gentle reminder from the management. For the comfort and safety of all residents, this building maintains a strict no pets policy. Thank you for your cooperation. Mr. Finch." Mr. Finch, the building manager, was a man who loved his rules. He was tall and thin, with a perfectly trimmed mustache, and he always wore a bow tie, even when he was just polishing the lobby's brass railings. Ken had once seen him use a small ruler to make sure the welcome mat was perfectly centered in front of the main door. A scruffy, shivering dog was definitely not part of Mr. Finch's perfectly centered world. Ken stepped outside into the cool morning. The city was already humming with life. A delivery truck was double parked, its driver whistling as he unloaded boxes. A few doors down, a new business was getting ready to open. A man with a friendly, round face and a big, bushy beard was carefully painting a sign in the window of what used to be a dusty old bookstore. The sign said, "The Daily Grind Coffee and Comfort opening soon." Ken walked to the park at the end of the block. He sat on a bench watching kids play on the swings and listening to the cooing of pigeons. And then he saw him, the dog. It was sniffing around the base of a water fountain, its tail tucked low. It looked even smaller and more lost in the bright light of day. It lapped at a small puddle on the ground, then looked up, its floppy ear twitching. Ken didn't call out. He just watched, his heart giving a small, complicated thud. Chapter 3. The Taste of Rain and a Shared Secret. The sky, which had been a clear, hopeful blue all morning, began to change. Fluffy white clouds gathered, turning gray and thick like a wool blanket being pulled across the sun. The air grew heavy. A single, fat drop of rain hit the pavement in front of Ken, making a dark circle. Then another and another. People in the park began to scatter, pulling up hoods and opening umbrellas. The dog looked up at the sky, confused, as the drizzle began to soak its scruffy fur. It took shelter under the meager protection of a park bench. Ken stood up. He couldn't just leave it there. He walked over slowly, making no sudden moves. "Hey there," he said, his voice soft. The dog flinched, but it didn't run. It just watched him with those big, dark eyes. Ken sat on the ground a few feet away, letting the rain dampen his jeans. He didn't try to touch it. They just sat there together for a long moment, two quiet figures in the suddenly empty, rain-swept park. Finally, Ken held out his hand. The dog crept forward, sniffing his fingers. Then, with a little sigh, it licked his hand once and pushed its cold, wet nose into his palm. The decision was made. Getting the dog back to his apartment without being seen was like a level in a stealth video game. He picked the dog up. It was surprisingly light, and tucked it inside his zip-up jacket. He used the back entrance, his heart pounding a little faster every time he heard a sound. He could hear Mr. Finch's cheerful, off-key whistling coming from the mailroom and froze, hiding in the stairwell until the sound faded. Back inside his apartment, the silence was finally broken. The dog, now temporarily named Gigi for good game, padded around the room on its little white-socked paws, sniffing everything. It sniffed the leg of the desk. It sniffed the trash can. It sniffed the succulent on the windowsill. Ken got a towel and gently dried its damp fur. The dog shivered, then leaned its whole body against Ken's leg, a silent thank you. Ken filled a bowl with water, which Gigi lapped up gratefully. The secret sat in the middle of the room with them, a living, breathing thing with a floppy ear and a hopeful tail. Outside, the rain began to fall harder, streaking down the big windowpane, washing the city clean. Through the wall, Ken heard the soft, muffled sound of Mrs. Gable's radio clicking on. A new chapter had begun. Chapter 4. The Scent of Coffee and a Near Miss. By the next day, it was clear that water wasn't going to be enough. Gigi's tummy was rumbling, a little gurgling sound that seemed to fill the whole apartment. Ken knew he needed to get proper dog food, but the thought of leaving Gigi alone felt wrong. He peered through the peephole of his door. The hallway was empty. He could hear Mrs. Gable's television, a game show, by the sounds of the energetic host. Taking a deep breath, he opened the door, and with Gigi tucked inside his jacket again, they began their second secret mission. As he walked down the street, he noticed the lights were on in the new coffee shop. "The opening soon" sign had been replaced with a simple, hand-painted "Come on in." The smell of freshly ground coffee and something sweet, maybe cinnamon, drifted out onto the wet pavement. On a whim, Ken pushed the door open. The inside was warm and cozy. The man with the bushy beard was behind the counter, wiping it down with a cloth. He beamed at Ken. "Welcome, you're my first official customer," he said, his voice booming with enthusiasm. "I'm Leo. First coffee is on the house." "I'm Ken," he replied, feeling the warmth of Gigi shifting inside his jacket. "Congratulations on opening." "Thanks, it's been a dream for a long time," Leo said, already working the espresso machine. It hissed and clanked, a comforting, industrious sound. I figure every neighborhood needs a place for a good cup and a quiet moment. What's your story? You live around here. Yeah, just up in the brick building on the corner, Ken said. Ah, the Finch building, Leo laughed. I met your manager, Mr. Finch, very particular gentleman. He told me my welcome mat was 3/4 of an inch off center. Before Ken could respond, the bell on the door jingled again. Mr. Finch himself walked in, his bow tie apiece.